Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So what am I talking about?
So, so everybody knows who you are and what you're most known for.
Yeah. I'm a comic book artist. My name is J. Scott Campbell. I've drawn and co-created comic books such as Gen 13 and Danger Girl. I've also done a lot of work with Marvel, lots of covers for them for books like such as Spider-Man, Thor, X-Men, those sorts of things.
So, so you've been doing this for how many years?
Since the early '90s. So
professionally,
yeah, for a while now. Yeah, oh, professionally, yeah. Definitely.
And then, when would you say was the first time you started drawing? Like, when did that come in hand?
I've been told since I was like a toddler or something like that. So pretty much my whole life I've been drawing. So.
Do you have a medium of preference, like using pens?
I'm still pretty much like old school. I pencil and I ink with you know, pens. So I'm pretty much that way. I do more and more sort of follow up and clean up and some color using the computer, but I still pretty much almost consistently always start off with something old school and analog, you know, paper and pencil. So
that works out really well. We were talking about how in the past you used to play some of the earlier Sega Genesis early games that had that kind of simple real feel where you could fill in your mind, and obviously your imagination's pretty vibrant.
Yeah. So no. I mean, it's funny. I mean, I was much more of an old school gamer than I am sort of a current one. I mean, I'm blown out by the technology and sort of the appeal of the modern games. I'm also very aware that if I was to take the time to play them, I would never get anything done because I can just see how all-consuming they could be. I mean, believe me, it's almost like I almost consider myself like an alcoholic who knows that I can't play the games because I would love them so much. But yeah, the old school games, like when I allowed myself to, when I was much younger, like the Nintendo, the Sega Genesis, is like all that stuff like definitely stimulated my creativity early on. I used to read the magazines. I entered tons of contests where I would draw the video game characters in my comic book style or then developing comic book style. And so the two went hand in hand, and like I said, yeah, I mean, those 8-bit games, they're a little bit simple, well, certainly very simple by today's standards, but like I said, my creativity would fill in the gaps. Like I would sort of like, it stimulated a lot of creativity because, like I said, they couldn't always depict everything that they can, obviously, now in those games. So like you would have to use your imagination. Like you're playing this Legend of Zelda, it's a pretty simplistic idea, so you have to kind of like imagine the world much more deluxe than it really was, and that was kind of fun. It was kind of neat to sort of like I said, to expand on it using your own imagination, you know, that kind of thing.
But it's interesting you say expand on it. So a lot of people would know your work and identify it by the way you draw the female form.
Sure.
And work through it. And then you, in the case of what I'm most familiar, the Fairy Tale Fantasies.
Yeah, the calendar.
It goes outside of, you know, there's the comic world and then the whole world's Gen, you know, with Gen that you're creating. And then that was just, how did that come about?
It's funny, for years I've noticed that so many people that don't collect comic books, that don't walk in a comic book store, still can find very often that style of artwork appealing. They're just, for some reason, sometimes they're turned off by the idea of a comic book. Or maybe they're just not into the content of comic books, maybe they're not into superheroes. But I found over the years, people get very excited when they see the artwork I do, even if they don't follow comic books. And I kept saying, boy, that's a potential audience that few of us are attempting to tap into. So by creating and also too, that mixed with the fact that I'm such a colossal fan of Disney, I'm a colossal fan of just fantasy in general, like in that old school sort of way with castles and that kind of stuff. I was like, what a great opportunity to sort of tap into that audience and perhaps market to reach outside of comic books and try to see if I can grab an audience that just is not a comic book audience. Now granted, comic books and comic book stores and that audience seems to really enjoy the calendar as well. And we're about to release our 4th one, actually. We've been doing this for about like 3 years now. But yeah, it's great because, like I said, I feel like I've reached a whole new spectrum of my audience, like an audience that just doesn't normally buy the comic books, but they're fans of this calendar, and now they're fans of me because of it. So yeah, I like that. I mean, and I'll probably continue doing that. Like we were talking about, video games, movies, comics, it's all cross-pollinating. And I think as comic book artists, we really limit ourselves when we get really kind of old school about it and say, oh, comic books are this. I'm like, no, you can break those boundaries. You can really take the comic book style and go into all these other genres if you think outside the box. And that's what I'm trying to do with things like the calendar. And I've got a lot of other projects in mind for the future that will continue to sort of like explore other elements or other venues outside of comics with a comic book style.
Pushing that envelope seems to, you light up. There's an excitement when you're talking about doing that.
Yeah.
Is there any of those projects that you have like in the works or in your head that like people should really, like, you're excited about enough that you'd want people to go, listen, you need to look out for this?
I'm almost like I take a cue from blocking their table. I take a cue from what am I talking about here? I lost my train of thought. Cut. No, from Apple. They're as a company, they're always developing new ideas, but they're very strategic about when they release those ideas. And as a creative person myself, I'm always being influenced by what's around me. So I tend to, being aware of that, I always try to make sure I don't give away my ideas too soon. Like with the calendar, I didn't tell really anybody until it came out, and then everybody was excited by it. So I do have ideas. I would love to tell people about them, but it takes a lot of discipline to sort of keep them to myself until the time is right. But like I said, it was a real great experience sort of doing the calendar and sort of going, hey, this could work, doing things outside of comic books, like I said, with a comic book flair, a comic book style. It can find an audience, and that's what's really exciting.
So with your current work, where can people go to find more information about you, see your work, and...
I would say jscottcampbell.com is a great place to start. I also have a Facebook page, a Twitter, a DeviantArt account, all under J. Scott Campbell, where, like I said, I'm always getting the word out on all my various projects, comic books or outside of comic books. And it's a great way. It's fantastic that artists like myself in this day and age can self-market ourselves this way. Like if you're a fan, you just look me up in any of these mediums, and then you've got like everything I'm up to. I would kill to have had that access to the artists I liked when I was back in the day, pre-internet, because back then you just had to hunt around and just bump into this stuff. Whereas now you can really, with just a very few clicks of the mouse, you can find out what every favorite creator that you admire is up to, which is fantastic.
Well, good. Well, I'll leave you back to your waiting fans, and thank you so much.
Definitely, it's a pleasure.